Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I would like to talk about a primer on value for investing and non-investing men. In this video I want to explain what value is, how it relates to human action, and what the relationship between price and value looks like. So let us dive right in and raise the question, what is value? The Austrian economist Karl Menger, he was born in 1840 and died in 1921, gave us a precise definition of value. He wrote, quote, "Value is the importance that individual goods or quantities of goods attain for us because we are conscious of being dependent on command of them for the satisfaction of our needs." The concept of value is the core element of a general theory of human behavior. It transcends the traditional confines of economic science. Value is a subjective concept, which means value lies in the eyes of the beholder. There is no such thing as objective value. Goods or things like books, apples, computers, etc. do not have value per se. It is always the individual that assigns value to them or not. Value is not an artificially invented concept. Rather, it is a category of human action. It is a praxeological or a logic of human action concept. Human action means, generally speaking, replacing one state of affairs with another state of affairs, expected to be more beneficial to the actor. It is a primordial fact that humans act. The statement humans act cannot be denied without causing a logical contradiction, that is, saying something false. The statement humans act is apodictically true. It is a so-called a priori in the Kantian sense. The denial of an a priori statement presupposes its validity. If you say something like, "Come on, humans do not act," then you act, proving the truth of the very statement you wish to deny. From the apodictically true statement humans act, we can deduce further true statements. For instance, human action implies that an actor's behavior is purposive. It is directed towards goals. Again, this statement cannot be denied without causing a logical contradiction. An actor must employ means to achieve his ends. Action without means is logically impossible to think. Human action implies that the actor has consciously chosen certain means to reach his goals. And since the actor wishes to attain these goals, whatever they may be, they must be valuable to him, and accordingly he must have values that govern his choices. What is more, every goal of human action must be considered worth more to the actor than its cost and capable of yielding a profit, a result whose value is ranked higher than that of the foregone opportunity. And that every action is also invariably threatened by the possibility of a loss if an actor finds in retrospect that, contrary to his expectation, the actually achieved result has a lower value than the relinquished alternative would have had. To reiterate, value is a praxeological concept, and this statement cannot be disputed without causing a logical contradiction, and thus saying something false. Against this backdrop, it is easy to understand what happens in a voluntary exchange. Consider the case in which you buy, say, one gold coin for $3,000 at your favorite coin shop run by Mr. Rich. In such a transaction, you surrender something you consider less valuable, $3,000, against something you value more highly, one gold coin. Likewise, in the exchange, Mr. Rich receives something he values more highly, namely $3,000, against surrendering something, one gold coin, he values less highly. The voluntary exchange benefits you as well as Mr. Rich. It is not a zero-sum game, that is, one person benefiting at the expense of another. On the contrary, the voluntary exchange is beneficial to both parties involved, thus increasing their state of want satisfaction, compared to a situation without the voluntary exchange having taken place. It should be highlighted that the voluntary exchange did not take place because of harmonious wishes on your and Mr. Rich's side. It took place because of opposite value scales. You wanted one gold coin in exchange for your $3,000, while Mr. Rich wanted $3,000 in exchange for one gold coin. The voluntary exchange led to a peaceful and mutually beneficial outcome. Isn't that wonderful? Let us address the issue of value and utility in some more detail. You assign value to things because you derive so-called utility from them, by owning them, seeing them, touching them, eating them, whatever. Value and utility cannot be measured. You can measure, say, a distance in meters or miles, or a weight in grams or pounds, or a temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit. For these cases, or in these cases, we deal with extensive magnitudes, and they are open to cardinal numbers. Value and utility, however, are not extensive but intensive magnitudes. They can only be conceptualized in ordinal terms, but not in cardinal terms. Like more is better than less, or I like A more than B. An actor assigning value to things and deriving utility from it means that he ranks them on a value scale. All an actor can say is, I like A more than B, or I like C less than D. He cannot say, I like A 2 times more than B, or I like C 5 times less than D. To say so would be meaningless. What is more, the subjective value cannot be compared among different people. As noted earlier, value and the associated utility cannot be measured. They can only be ranked on an individual's ordinal scale. In this context, it is important to remind ourselves of the so-called law of diminishing marginal utility, which can also be derived from the logic of human action and is thus also an a priori. What does the law of diminishing marginal utility say? Murray Rothbard explains, quote, there are two laws of utility, both following from the apodictic conditions of human action. First, that given the size of a unit of a good, the marginal utility of each unit decreases as the supply of units increases. Second, that the marginal utility of a larger sized unit is greater than the marginal utility of a smaller sized unit. The first is the law of diminishing marginal utility. The second has been called the law of increased total utility. The relationship between the two laws and between the items considered in both is purely one of rank, that is, ordinal. To illustrate Rothbard's explanation of the law of diminishing marginal utility, consider the following value scale of an actor, say Mr. Schultz. So we take a look at Mr. Schultz's ranks in value, which look like this. 3 eggs over 2 eggs, 2 eggs over 1 egg, 1 egg over the second egg, and the second egg over the third egg. The higher the ranking on this individual value scale for eggs is, the higher is the value. By the second law, 3 eggs are valued more highly than 2 eggs, and 2 eggs are valued more highly than 1 egg. By the first law, the second egg will be ranked below the first egg on the value scale, and the third egg below the second egg. No mathematical relationship exists between, for instance, the marginal utility of 3 eggs and the marginal utility of the third egg, except that the former is greater than the latter. Let's take a brief look at another example of an actor's value scale. Mr. Smith has got 10 ends he wishes to achieve, ranked on the vertical line in the graph below. His most important end is shown at the top of the vertical line, number 1, the lowest ranked end at the bottom, number 10. The horizontal axis shows the number of available means or units to achieve his ends. If Mr. Smith has just got, say, 6 units of a means, say money units, to satisfy his ends, then the first 6 ends can be satisfied, while the ends ranked 7 to 10 remain unsatisfied. The first unit of this means goes to satisfy end number 1, the second unit to serve end number 2, etc. And the 6th unit is used to serve end number 6. The diagram illustrates what the law of diminishing marginal utility says. First, the utility or value of more units is greater than the utility of fewer goods, as more units help to achieve more goals. And second, that the utility of each successive unit is less as the quantity of the units increases. Now assume Mr. Smith must give up 1 unit of his means. With 5 units, he can only satisfy 5 of his 10 ends. Given the, in this example, assumed interchangeability of the units, he gives up satisfying the end ranked number 6 and continues to satisfy the more important ends 1 to 5. The important thing is the actor gives up the lowest ranking want that the original stock, in this case 6 units, was capable of satisfying. This is the marginal unit, or the unit at the margin. This least important end fulfilled by the stock is known as the satisfaction provided by the marginal unit, or the utility of the marginal unit, in short, the marginal utility. In the graph below, the marginal utility is ranked 6th among the ends. So far we have considered consumer goods. But what about so-called producer goods? Goods that are produced and then used for producing consumer goods and or other producer goods. Producer goods, the factors of production that cooperate in the production of consumer goods, have no immediate connection with the satisfaction of human wants. However, through the causal production process, they indirectly bear on the process of want satisfaction. The entrepreneur will attempt to employ a production good or factor at the price that will be at least less than its discounted marginal value product. The marginal value product is the monetary revenue that may be attributed or imputed to 1 unit of the producer good. The important point here is the value of a consumer good from the viewpoint of consumers is imputed to producer goods employed in its production, because the latter is a necessary, if indirect, cause of this satisfaction which is directly attributable to the quantity of consumer goods. Suppose, for example, that a firm is combining factors in the following way. 4 units of X plus 10 units of Y plus 2 units of Z produce a product that can be sold for 100 gold ounces. Now suppose that the entrepreneur estimates that the following would happen if 1 unit of X were eliminated. The loss of 1 unit of X, other factors remaining constant, has resulted in the loss of 20 gold ounces of gross revenue. This then is the marginal value product of the unit at this position and with this use. We can also reverse this process. Suppose the firm is at present producing in the latter productions and reaping 80 gold ounces. If it adds a fourth unit of X to its combination, keeping other quantities constant, it earns 20 more gold ounces. So that here as well, the marginal value product of this unit is 20 gold ounces. In this example, a producer would be willing to pay up to 20 ounces of gold for 1 unit of X, that is, the marginal value product of X. Now let us turn to money and ask, what about the value of money? Money is a good like any other. It is only special in the sense that it has the highest marketability or liquidity of all goods. Being a good like any other, the value of money from an individual's point of view falls under the law of diminishing marginal utility, the economic law that was outlined earlier. With this in mind, we can understand what happens if the number of money units in the hands of an individual actor increases. The marginal utility of the money unit declines. And Ludwig von Mises explains what happens if the money stock in an economy is increased. Quote, "An increase in a community's stock of money always means an increase in the amount of money held by a number of economic agents, whether these are the issuers of fiat or credit money or the producers of the substance of which commodity money is made. For these persons, the ratio between the demand for money and the stock of it is altered. They have a relative superfluity of money and a relative shortage of other economic goods. The immediate consequence of both circumstances is that the marginal utility to them of the monetary unit diminishes. This necessarily influences their behavior in the market. They are in a stronger position as buyers. They will now express in the market their demand for the objects they desire more intensively than before. They are able to offer more money for the commodities that they wish to acquire. It will be the obvious result of this that the prices of the goods concerned will rise, and that the objective exchange value of money will fall in comparison. But this rise of prices will by no means be restricted to the market for those goods that are desired by those who originally have the new money at their disposal. In addition, those who have brought these goods to market will have their incomes and their proportionate stocks of money increased and, in their turn, will be in a position to demand more intensively the goods they want, so that these goods will always rise in price. So that these goods will also rise in price. Thus, the increase of prices continues, having a diminishing effect until all commodities, some to a greater and some to a lesser extent, are reached by it. The increase in the quantity of money does not mean an increase of income for all individuals. On the contrary, those sections of the community that are the last to receive, that are the last to be reached by the additional quantity of money, have their incomes reduced as a consequence of the decrease in the value of money called forth by the increase in its quantity. The reduction in the income of these classes now start a counter tendency which opposes the tendency to a diminution of the value of money due to the increase of income of the other classes without being able to rob it completely of its effect. Quote ends. By taking recourse to the law of diminishing marginal value, Mises explains in this quote that first, an increase in the quantity of money lowers the exchange value of the money unit. That second, it affects different actors differently, making some richer at the expense of others. And that third, it causes disruptions in the economic and financial process, potentially causing boom and bust. This would be especially the case if the increase in the quantity of money is via credit markets. Finally, in this context, it should be noted that money's subjective value is conditioned by its exchange value or purchasing power. In the case of money, subjective use value and subjective exchange value coincide. For money has not utility or value for the actor. For money has not utility or value for the actor, then arising from the possibility of exchanging it against other vendible items. Now let us turn to the question, what about the value of the firm or a firm's stock price? As we have seen, when a good is being subjectively valued, it is ranked by someone in relation to other goods on his value scale. However, when a good is being evaluated in the sense of finding out its market value, the evaluator estimates how much the good could be sold for in terms of money in the future. This sort of activity is known as appraisement, and it needs to be distinguished from subjective valuation. If Mr. X says, "I shall be able to sell the stock next week for $250, he appraises the stock's purchasing power, or its money price, at $250. He does not rank the stock and the US dollar on his own value scale, but is appraising the money price of the stock at some point in the future. You may ask, how does Mr. X come up with his estimate of $250 per stock? Well, he might have a model in mind, like, say, the discounted cash flow model, according to which a company is worth the present value of all its future cash flows discounted to the present day. Or he may use a concept such as multiplying a firm's annual profit by a multiple. Or he has just got a gut feeling. Appraisement of an asset like, say, a stock or a commodity involves individual acting, and successful appraisement requires entrepreneurial spirit and talent, acumen. Some people are good at it in terms of grasping a stock's future market price, while others fail in this endeavor. That said, it does not take wonder that in the real world there are great differences of opinion concerning the appraised value of a firm, and therefore the appraised value of the firm's stock. If Mr. X comes to the conclusion that the market price of a stock should be, say, $250, his appraised price for the stock, while the stock currently trades at, say, $500, he might wish to sell the stock, thereby preventing him from capital loss. We get right back into the issue of subjective value, however, as soon as Mr. X sells his stock in the market for, say, $250. For this shows that he values the stock on his personal value scale less highly than the number of US dollars he receives in exchange for it. Likewise, the buyer values the stock more highly than the $250 he surrenders.